So around here in the US and a lot of places in the world, it is the start of the new school year. And for many classrooms, that means building a foundation for learning. So today's theme, of course, is going back to the basics. So I want to start with what exactly is AI? And I'd love to play a little game of word association with you. I'm going to put on a 1 minute timer and we're going to go back and forth saying a word or phrase based on instinct, starting with AI. So that will be the first word. And I'm going to let you go first after that. It's like, what's the first thing that you think of when you hear AI? You're doing a word association based on the last word that you
Cool.
heard.
So we could end up on
Okay.
something completely unrelated to AI. Okay.
100%. And I'm just kind of curious where that goes.
I love word association.
Okay. Well, you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
So I'll start by saying the first word and then you go. We have to move fast, I think. Okay. AI,
Machine learning,
brain,
intelligence,
education,
school,
classrooms,
teacher,
student,
textbook,
Chromebook,
laptop,
computer,
Steve Jobs,
apple,
fruit,
watermelon,
cucumber,
vegetable,
carrot,
beta carotene,
orange,
vitamin C.
healthy.
Okay. And my timer went off.
On timer, okay.
So that's so interesting. We started with AI and we ended it with the word healthy.
Healthy. Is AI healthy?
It's a good question, right? Is AI healthy?
And Jill,
Maybe we will tackle that today.
what was the inspo for the word association game?
So, when I used to be a teacher, I would always start with what was called an anticipatory set and a way to kind of get the kids into a lesson that was like a hook, basically. And so we had on occasion played word association. And the idea behind it is that it ends up bringing up some background knowledge, even though everything is not related to the initial word. In our case, obviously, I don't think that you'd necessarily start with AI and go right to healthy, but it was kind of cool how at the very beginning we had this trajectory that did lead us to healthy. And then ultimately we had this question, is AI healthy?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Love it. We'll
So
circle back and do it at the end.
let's go back to that original question though. What exactly is AI? And I would really love to start here with what your definition is of AI.
Okay, so my definition of AI, very, very high level, is any form of intelligence that isn't executed by a human brain. So that's just my one liner, one sentence. And then I guess that also raises the question of how do you define intelligence? Like, how would I define that?
I would imagine there would be some sort of scale. Everybody defines intelligence very differently.
Like, what constitutes something intelligent for me might be different to you, to someone else. My idea of intelligence is doing anything without a defined set of rules. In terms of computers, um, we can have basic programming that's like, if this is true, then do this. So like, if it's 30 degrees, turn on the fan. If it's dark outside, turn on the light. But that's like a rigid set of rules. It's literally just following instructions, which to me is not intelligence in my definition. Intelligence would be learning, seeing something multiple times, like suddenly when it hits 8 p.m. and it gets dark, the lights turn on, and then one day turning them on yourself.
I love that you really simplified it to literally a sentence and you left it very open ended for interpretation, which is pretty cool, right? The way I think of AI is a very advanced computer system. And I picture it as an umbrella. And then underneath the umbrella are terms that we frequently hear: machine learning, large language models, generative. And then I break down each of those three terms that are under the umbrella, right? Machine learning, for example, is when a machine learns from an example. A large language model predicts the word or words that come next, and they're trained on a lot of text. And then generative comes from the word generate. It takes what it's already learned and creates something new. So, how'd I do, Professor Will?
I love it. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's it. I like the idea of having an umbrella term, and we hear all of these AI related buzzwords: machine learning, pattern recognition, generative AI, LLMs, you name it, open source. It's an umbrella term, AI, to describe all of that. And then just a question for you. How would you define ChatGPT from that list of definitions and buzzwords you just said?
I would say that ChatGPT is an example of a large language model.
Okay, cool, cool. And just based on what you said, actually, I might add one thing, that ChatGPT is also
Sure.
generative. So maybe I'd call it a generative large language model.
Oh, look at that. We worked collaboratively.
Go, go.
So awesome. If I did my own word association just on AI and I made a word web out of it, only associating things with I feel like there are often a lot of myths about it. Like some people hear AI and they automatically only think robots, for example, but AI is far beyond just robots. However, another myth that some people are unaware of, some people think that AI is new because it's so talked about in the news. And to their point, there are definitely aspects of it that are very newly developed, but it's not new. It dates back all the way to the Turing test from the 1950s when a mathematician came up with a game to determine whether or not a computer is capable of thinking.
I think that's really important to mark that AI is not just because it's in the news, because there's all these startups around AI. It seems a bit like the new Facebook. Let's just take Facebook. Facebook was purely that. It was just a new venture off new technology. These AI companies are new ventures, but it's not off a new technology. It's technology that's been discussed, yes, like you said, since the 50s. And there's been PhDs and scientists dedicated to AI since the 50s and 60s. So it does have a longer history than just this new technology got invented and now we're building companies around it.
It's so interesting too. When I looked up a better definition from the Turing test, I actually had a really hard time finding a great definition of it. So I kind of reverted to how I learned when I was really young, and I had a set of encyclopedias. And to me, that was a reliable source. So I always look things up there. Encyclopedia Britannica is online now. So I said, let me see what Encyclopedia Britannica says about it. And it explained the Turing test as a remote human interrogator within a fixed time frame must distinguish between a computer and a human subject based on their replies to various questions posed by the interrogator. By means of a series of such tests, a computer's success at thinking can be measured by its probability of being misidentified as a human subject. I had not a clue what any of that means. It was like a lot of words, a lot of jargon. I would really love for you to help me break that down to better understand because I do think the Turing test is actually a key milestone in the history of AI. However, I want to first try to put it into my own words, the way I would break something down if I was having a hard time understanding it. And I would say, this is again how I picture it. Before I pictured AI as the umbrella. So now I picture a room kind of with a divider in the middle, and there's a human in one room. And in the other side of the room, there's a computer and another human. We can call the computer A and we can call the other human B for our purposes, right? The human on the other side of the wall asks both the computer and a human a question, and they both respond. And the computer really has to guess which response came from the computer versus a human. Did I get any of that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the way that I understand it. My understanding is that the Turing test is about, can an AI simulate human thought? Can an AI basically think like a human? And how do we know if an AI can think like a human? It's when a human can't tell the difference between a human answer and an AI answer. So that's the end goal. If there's an output generated and me as a human can't say, oh, that was definitely generated by a human or definitely generated by an AI, the AI has passed the Turing test. It's simulated human thought.
So interesting, though, because Alan Turing, way back when, had predicted that by 2000, a computer could potentially respond so well that the human wouldn't know if it was a computer or human generated response. While that didn't necessarily happen by 2000, I found this really awesome blog article that was recently written from the New York Academy of Sciences. It was called Have We Passed the Turing Test and Should We Really Be Trying? There is a lot of debate out there currently in the news whether ChatGPT 4, deepfakes, or Sora have beat the Turing test. But what I loved most is that the writer asked, if we're not there yet, should we strive to get there?
I read that article and I thought it was a really interesting question to pose. Like, would we rejoice in the fact that we now have built things that are non-humans that are more intelligent than humans? And honestly, we don't know what it would look like to create something more intelligent than ourselves because it hasn't happened. We won't know, will it be a good thing? Will we be able to control it? Will we live in harmony? Or we don't know, would it completely destroy us? Based on the past 300,000 years or so that Homo sapiens have been the number one intelligence on the planet, or at least we like to think we are, we know that the most intelligent form has ruled the planet, right? Has had the power over the planet. So that is one truth that we know. So if there's now a new higher intelligence, following that logic, it would rule the planet, which is a scary thought. And in that case, I don't think we want it to take over. Although ruling the planet doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing. That's just my take on it. But it doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing. Either way, we'll end up doing it. Like whether it's a good or bad, or we should rejoice in it, it will happen sooner or later. We'll have a more
I
intelligent AI than ourselves. Yeah.
I agree with you on that part because no one's stopping developing artificial intelligence unless there are major regulations that force people to push the pause button.
Mhm. Well, that being said, there have been examples of where technologies that pose an existential threat have been halted. So nuclear weapons is an example. We went through a period of 20 or so years where a bunch of countries were pumping out nuclear weapons like it was, the end of the world, and it could have been. And
Right.
and now we've got agreements in place that halt the production of nuclear weapons. So there are examples in history of us containing something that is more powerful than ourselves and trying to put a lid on it.
That's a good point, and I imagine that we will get there with AI as well.
Only time will tell, as we say always.
Only time will tell. Okay, so shall we play another game of word association, except this time, instead of me choosing the word to start with, I would love to let you choose the word to start with.
Okay.
So remember, the first game of word association, we started with AI, we ended with healthy. And it's actually very interesting because we also ended our conversation talking about the Turing test and this whole idea of whether or not we should even try to pass the Turing test. So I kind of feel like that was a conversation about whether or not AI is healthy for us, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
let's see where
yeah,
this
yeah.
so let's see if, and that was totally unintentional. So
Uh,
let's see how we end this episode with our new game of word association. Ready?
Ready.
Go.
History.
Repeat.
Cycle.
Dominoes.
Game.
Competition.
Sports.
Athletes.
Cool.
Warm.
Temperature.
Fahrenheit.
Celsius.
Science.
Einstein.
Relativity.
Theories.
Wonder.
Or
Time's up.
okay.
Okay, wait. So we started with what was the word that you picked?
History.
And we ended with awe. So
And
are we in awe of
and
history?
yeah. That one was
And
interesting.
it was really interesting
Yeah.
and it was actually really challenging. But
Mhm.
I think it was really fun and a
Fun.
fun activity for us to do together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to next week. I'm so glad that today we went back to the basics. I learned a lot. I hope you did too.
Yeah, awesome. Can't wait to explore more. And it's great to discuss.
Okay, talk soon.
See you. Bye.